Welcome back to Reynolds Runabouts, everybody. This is Jeffrey Reynolds. Today I'm going to show you how I repaired this Kingplank that was on this 55 Wagemaker. It had a twist in it lengthwise that has been there for years from what I can tell. There was even epoxy under this one edge. So when somebody epoxied this deck, they might have tried to put adhesive epoxy underneath this reliefed edge. I'm not sure. All I found was that we had a tipped edge. I couldn't get it fixed using new fasteners. Clamps would hold it, but not fasteners. So I decided it was time to re-steam it and take the memory out of it and give it a new memory today with the steam and then clamps back into place. So I will show you how I did that. I've taken the Kingplank off the deck of the boat because I had an area up here that was warped. So I knew I had to get it off to figure out why. I know why it's warped. And it probably happened years ago. A fastener came loose. It opened up that lip a little bit. Water got in. The warp continued. So here we are to fix it. What I discovered also is that all of these deck beams and frames have been split. Probably from the factory where the fastener hole drill was an appropriate size. It was too small. So they drove in panhead screws into that Kingplank for some reason. I don't know why. I'm going to put in countersink number 8s after I fix these. And what I do is I just go ahead and put I put dowels in each, and I can't even get, I couldn't get a clamp. I could get a clamp in there, but the split might be farther up. It could be in some of these other fasteners too. So I'm going to go ahead and clip, or dowel and clip all of these. Probably put some glue in here, turn the boat back up on level, and just let that soak in. And then I'll re-drill. Using the Kingplank fastener holes, I'll use those, but go in with a countersink number 8 fuller tip drill bit and just make sure I have that in nice solid wood. And yeah, I think the Kingplank will do much better. Yeah, it will clamp down and the warp will go out of it, and I'll fasten it. And then when I put the epoxy on, the Kingplank will be encapsulated with epoxy to keep water from getting in and stretching, whereas the plywood won't because it's stable. I'll put in a little bead of thickened epoxy on this glue line where they had glue originally, and then make sure that I have all that covered underneath, especially here on the beam, so that it doesn't stick to that. So someday, if this deck ever has to come off, the deck will come off as one piece made up of 3 instead of having tear out the frame. So we're gonna do that. The Kingplank that I'm working on, that goes on the middle of the foredeck, it covers up a seam. Many boats, there's enough gap in the 2 pieces of plywood that they just put in a Kingplank, and that's what this is. It sits down onto the frames, but also bridges the gap of the plywood with probably a 1/2 inch overlap. Now the plan is to put epoxy adhesive into this overlap with some thickening agent and then fasten it down to the frames. This bottom part will not be attached to the boat with epoxy, just with fasteners. I'll have dolphinite bedding compound in there to keep the water out of the frame, and this thing will be completely encapsulated in epoxy. Problem is, there's a precipitous twist. The twist was on the boat when I got it. It looks like it's been there for years. I'm going to fix it. And I'm afraid if I put the epoxy on and the fasteners and this fastener up here on the left pulls or fails, it will rip the plywood layer, and I don't want that either. That's just a bigger mess. And then I have epoxy hardened on everything but the area that pulled up. So I'm going to steam it. So it's going to sit in this bath of water, soaking for several days, to get water back into the wood. and the cells, and then I'll steam it in a bag with my steamer, and the steam will then heat up that water that is soaked into the wood and the cells and allow it to be flexible and bendable. And then I'll put it back on the boat dry with the fasteners and clamps and let it sit for several days to take the new form and see where I'm at. If it has a twist that just won't go away, we have bigger problems. So I'm going to let this soak for a few days. And all I did is I made a 2x4 frame, and all you want to do is just, you make a frame and then you put in some 5 mil plastic and a bunch of water and just let it soak. Some people use eave troughs for skinnier stock. I mean, anything that will hold water for several days, just so it gets, you know, it gets soaked in there. So I took a clean bucket, knowing that it doesn't have any solvents or anything in it that are going to affect this wood or my finishes. I put some warm water in here, and you just make a bathtub. Newer mahogany will turn this water brown, or it'll have a tan look to it, as you know, the tannins and everything. The tannins and everything are releasing, and then you can see it's floating. So I'm going to weigh that down with some plastic weights that won't dent the wood or put some sort of color into the wood. They're weights from a weight machine that are fully plastic coated, so they make for great things like this. So I'm going to do that, and we'll let this soak for a few days. And when you do the steaming process, it's usually an hour per 1 inch, so this will probably take just about an hour. It's just right under an inch. So we'll steam this for about an hour, and then I'll show you how I put it back on. I've got my steam system set up for today so I can steam that Kingplank for the boat. First thing I do is I have my Earlex steam generator 77. It's a 1.3 gallon steam generator that a lot of craftsmen use for bending furniture, veneers, things like that. I found it to be very effective for mahogany and oak wood. I used it on a 16-foot piece of mahogany plywood on my Wondercraft project in place. I put it in the bag, hooked up the steamer on a little table next door to the boat, and turned it on, and I steamed it in place with clamps. The plywood flexed, but the steam allowed it to then get a memory in that position. So I steamed it in place, let it sit there for a week, took it off. It still had that shape. Went ahead and put the fasteners in. This Kingplank kind of will be the same. It's lumber, mahogany lumber, 3/4 inch. It's been soaking for 2 days in a bath of water. It's totally submerged. And I emptied the water, took the same bag, 5 mil plastic you can get at any big box store, duct taped it with 2 seams, meaning 1 and then 2, so I have a double duct tape seam. I left the end open about this much for the steam to exit. You need to have somewhere for the steam to exit the bag or it'll blow up. So put a bucket at the end. I have a tiny little hole where the steam will drip out into a bucket. I have a steam entrance where the tube comes in, and it'll flow through this bag, and for an hour I will let it cook. It took me about 15 minutes for the steamer to get up to boil. It's been boiling for a few minutes now. I've got half a gallon of distilled water, which is what I use, so I don't introduce any minerals from the water into the wood. One more thing to worry about. And then I have my welding gloves, because when this comes out, it's going to be very hot. And you're going to want to use welding gloves at least to get it on the boat. And then with these gloves, I can still manipulate the screws and the fasteners, and the heat isn't too bad. You can use the really heavy welding gloves, but they're almost too cumbersome to do anything well. So If you had a really huge plank, maybe that would be a good idea, but this one I know is going to be fine. I have my utility blade knife just in case I have a problem. I can slice the bag. I'm near the exterior door of my shop. I can open the door. Things can go out into the driveway. Should anything go wrong, I don't know what that would be. First thing I would do is unplug it. My cord is up in the air. It's away from any water that might spill. And now I just wait for an hour. And when I get to an hour, I will literally in the bag kind of flex it, see if I like it. And then we'll go ahead and put it on. I'm ready to take my plank out of my bag. It's been an hour. I'm going to take it out the exit hole. In case I ever have to reuse the bag, I can always just get back in here. Hopefully this will be the only time I've got to do it. Just got to be very careful of this water because it's literally boiling. So I'm going to pull my cord from my steamer. That way we've got no steam coming out, or I should say it's stopped boiling. I just got to find the end here. There we go. Here she comes. Oh, nice and hot. So what I've got here, I've got the plank down on the high ends. These were the twist was in the middle. So I've got the high end, and the low end obviously is buried in because it was always the low end. So I'm going to start adding screws now. This one I need to get to, so I'm going to have to come in around it. Bow of a boat is never easy. Never easy to get flat with a clamp, but after an hour, it's really pliable. I'm very careful not to strip these. I want them to sit there and do their work while it cools. Make sure I'm flush. You see I've got my welding gaiters on. Should have something on your chest and your arms with this hot board in case you're not just paying attention. You've got a very hot piece of wood in your hand. So I'm trying not to strip these holes. They're wet. Just want to get it down tight so when this cools, I can feel the seam with my fingertips, so I know I'm getting a good tight feel there. And the last three. Start with the middle. I think there's three in this one because of the sheer width of this. This has a beautiful camber on it. There's a beautiful camber on it at the end where the plank is really picking up the camber of the deck. Not getting what I want there. So I'm going to put a bigger, got 1.5 inches on that one. There's a lot of torque on that middle one. I might just have to clamp it. Get her down until she's ready to take a screw. Yep, still not the best, so I'm going to clamp that. Right in the middle. So we've got the plank down, and I've taken the clamps off, and it looks like it's holding really well. I had a clamp back here. I'm going to send a few fasteners back into that, and that'll complete this. And I'll let this sit for several days, if not weeks. And when I get ready to do it, the memory should be there. What'll happen is I'll take it back up and relieve the area if I need to, still in there. But the water volume is leaving. I've already tested it. It was probably about 30% when I put it on hot, so it had a lot of water in it. And that'll slowly wick out over the next few weeks. And then it'll be ready to take epoxy without any problem of having too much moisture in the plank. And like I said, I'll coat the bottom of it. It'll be kind of tacky, but I'll have dolphinite on the top of the frame so it won't stick. Then I'll have epoxy adhesive right here on this kind of this overlap, and then I'll have that taped. And then I'll put it back down with screws, and then that will be part of the deck. If anything ever happened, the deck had to come off or whatever, this and the two pieces would not be attached to the frames or the top of the frame shelf, so it would be easy to take off, relatively easy. And then I'll go ahead and do 3 coats of epoxy after the stain is on, like I did with the parts and the interior, and give this deck a really good surface for many years and save a lot of time and save a lot of varnish. So I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to see the series continue and be alerted every 2 weeks on Wednesday mornings that the video is out, please hit the subscribe button. If you're enjoying it to the point where you want to hit the like button, great. Positive feedback is always welcome here. And if you have any comments or suggestions, please put those in the comments below. And if there's a question involved, I'll try to answer it. If not, I'm always open to hearing different ideas. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in a few weeks.